All right, here are some solutions to the Chapter 11 review when we are working on quadratic equations and quadratic functions. So I'm not going to necessarily do them all, but we'll get through a few here. So solving these guys up here, we have, we want to solve for x squared. We notice we don't have any other terms here. We don't have any x terms. So let's just get the 5 out of there. 36x squared equals 5. We want to divide by the 36, and we've got x squared equals 5 over 36. Let's take a square root of both sides, and we end up with x equals, don't forget your plus or minus. We're going to square root the top, and we know the square root of the bottom is 6. Square root of 36 is 6. So we'll leave it at that. No need to rationalize because it already is. Over here, we want to get that x squared all by itself, so let's add 6 to both sides. And we end up with 2 times x minus 6 squared equals 6. Let's divide by 2. We want to get that squared thing all by itself. There we have it. We're going to square roots. And we got x minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. 2 answers there. Let's add 6 to both sides. Add 6. And so we have x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 3. Remember, that means 2 answers. 6 plus the square root of 3 and 6 minus the square root of 3. We want exact answers here, like we were stated in the directions up top here, exact answers. So leave it with the square root. Here we're all ready for some, no, we're actually not, sorry. Thought we were ready for some grouping. But we need to distribute here. So let's clean it up first. Distribute this guy here, 4x squared minus 8x. Distribute the negative 3x. Don't forget that negative. 3x squared minus 3x equals negative 18. Let's combine like terms. That gives us x squared minus 11x equals negative 18. And let's add that 18. We want to get this equal to 0. We want to put it in standard form. 11x plus 18 equals 0. Now we're going to look for a way to factor two numbers that add to negative 11 and multiply to 18. And I believe that those are negative 2 and negative 9. And so we set two equations here, either x minus 2 equals 0 or x minus 9 equals 0. So we have x equals 2 or x equals 9, and we need both of those answers. There we have it. Number 4 here, we want to factor it if we can. Two numbers that add to 2, multiply to 3. Oh, they don't exist. So we need to solve this. We can find different ways. We can use the completing the square. We can try the quadratic formula, which would probably be the way that we would prefer. Completing the square is fine. We need to know how to complete the square. Okay, be prepared on the test to complete the square. But we got a quadratic formula. Got to have it down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So feel free to sing the song during the test. So we end up with negative 2 plus or minus, and we've got 4 minus 12 all over 2. Well, 4 minus 12 is negative. Let's try that again. Negative 8 all over 2. That negative is going to come out as an I here. So we're going to have negative 2 plus or minus. We're going to have an I because of the negative. Now the square root of 8 is 4 times 2. So the square root of 4 we can do. Okay, so remember the square root of 8 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, which is 2 square root of 2. So let's replace that with 2 square root of 2, all over 2. Now we're going to divide here. Watch out. The only dividing we can do is if we can divide both ways, because we're really factoring out this 2 factoring out a 2 from both of these and then canceling it. So you've got to cancel with both terms up top, and that leaves us with -1 plus or minus the I square root of 2. And this canceled, the 2 did, so we'll just leave it alone. There's our answer. 2 answers, the plus or minus. Quadratic equation here, we want to set it equal to 0. So let's subtract the 2x and the 5, and we got x squared minus 2x minus 5. Are there two numbers that add to -2 and multiply to 5 or -5? No, there is not. So we need to use a quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. And so we have x equals 2 plus or minus, this comes out to be 4, and this is going to be 20. 4 plus 20. Watch out for that negative. So this is going to be a square root of 24 all over 2. Square root of 24 is going to be the square root of 4 times the square root of 6, which we know is 2 square root of 6 all over 2. And this 2 cancels both ways. 2 goes into all 3 of these here, divides both of them, and that gives us 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 2 root 6 divided by 2 is root 6. There you have it. Now let's go ahead and let's complete the square on number 6 here, just for good practice. To complete the square, we need to subtract 8 from both sides. By the way, check to see if there's two numbers that add to -4 and multiply to 8, and there are not. So subtract 8, we want to get this all by itself. Now we need to complete the square by adding half of this squared. Half of -4 is 2. Let's put it over here. -4 divided by 2 squared, that's going to be 2 squared, which is 4. So we're going to add 4 to both sides, and so we end up with x squared, minus 4x plus 4 equals -4. This factors into x minus 2 squared. Okay, and we set it up to make sure that happened, and then we want to square root both sides. And so when we square root, we get x minus 2 equals, now there's going to be there's a negative there, so there's going to be an I. Square root of 4 we know is 2, and don't forget your plus or minus. So finally we add 2 to both sides, and we have x equals 2 plus or minus 2i, which represents 2 answers. We have 2 plus 2i and 2 minus 2i. So 2 answers there. Okay. Number 7 here, we can distribute. And we're going to clean it up first. 6x squared plus 6x. Distribute everything, we should get this. Then let's combine like terms and set it equal to 0. So we get, let's see, -12x squared. Oh, that's nice. The x's go away. I like that. Subtract 10 from both sides. Actually, we didn't necessarily need to do that because the x's go away. Let's go ahead and put it back. Let's say goodbye. Let's put the 10 back. We don't need to set it equal to 0 because the x's went away. We're just going to use the square root method. -12, divide both sides by -12. X squared equals, this is going to simplify to -5/6. We'll just throw the negative upstairs. Let's square root this. And so we have x equals, we got a plus or minus. Now we got a negative, so we're going to have an I. We're going to have the square root of 5 over the square root of 6. We don't want to leave the square root of 6 down there. So multiply by the square root of 6 over the square root of 6 to rationalize the denominator. And that's going to leave us with x equals plus or minus I times the square root of 30, because 5 times 6 is 30, all over 6. Or we might write it like this, plus or minus square root of 30 over 6i. All right. On number 15 here on the review, we're going to find the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts. To find the x-intercepts, we want to set y equal to 0. So set y equal to 0, we get 0 equals 2x squared plus 4x minus 6. Just got to solve this using our techniques. We have lots of different techniques. A good way to go here first, so let's divide everything by 2 because they're all even. We notice all the coefficients are even. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And we divide everything by 2 here. 2 divided by 2 is 1x squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2x. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now we ask ourselves if we can factor that, and I think we can. 0 equals x plus 3 and x minus 1. So we get two answers, and that's x equals negative 3 and x equals 1. Okay, so our x-intercepts are negative 3 and 1. Okay, the y-intercepts, to find the y-intercepts here, well actually let's back up a little bit. So directions say write them as ordered pairs. Let's follow the directions. So these are x-intercepts, so we have a y value of 0, so negative 3, 0, and 1, 0. There's our x-intercepts. The y-intercepts, we're going to find g of 0, and g of 0 just gives us 2 times 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 6, and that's just going to be negative 6. So the y-intercept is just that constant, and that would be 0, negative 6. There's our y-intercept. Alright, let's see if we can fit 16 in here. Alright, so let's find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0. Y equal to 0, negative 2x squared plus 9x minus 13. I don't think we're going to be able to solve that with factoring. So let's go with the quadratic formula. X equals negative b. You got b squared minus 4 times a times c. Negative 2 times negative 13. Watch out for those negatives. All over 2 times a. Alright. And underneath the radical here, simplify that carefully. We've got 81. Let's see. 81. And this is going to come out to be minus. And so we're going to have 8 times 13. Oh, that's going to be negative 9 plus or minus the square root of negative 23. Well, that comes out to be an imaginary number because we got this negative under the radical, so there are no x-intercepts. All right? So no x-intercepts here because we get an imaginary solution there. All right? For the y-intercepts, let's go ahead and plug in 0 for x, and we get negative 2 times 0 squared plus 9 times 0 minus 13 equals negative 13. And so this is the point 0, negative 13. Okay? And so there is our y-intercept. All right. That's how we do those. So let's go ahead and move down here. Let's try 17. We want to solve for the specific variable here. So let's go ahead and do that. We want to get r here all by itself, little r that is. So let's get this stuff out of there. Let's multiply it by 3. on both sides. That's going to get rid of that 1/3. So we got 3v equals pi r squared plus little r squared. And let's get the pi out of there. Let's divide by pi because it's being multiplied. And so we have 3v. Let's try again. 3v over pi equals r, big R squared, plus little r squared. Let's get the big R squared out of there. And remember, when you're solving these equations for another variable, we just don't try to simplify it. I mean, if you can, that's great, but these cancel those r squareds, leaving us with a little r squared. So we're going to get rid of that square by square rooting. And we have r in the end. We've got little r equals the square root of 3v over pi minus r squared. And that's a fine way to leave it there. Okay, don't have to do any simplifying. Just leave it alone. This guy right here, now we want to solve it for t. Now t has a squared on it, so it's going to be quadratic because t is a variable we care about. A is just like a number. Treat a like a constant. So let's get all of these variables over to one side. Okay, let's subtract 2a. Let's subtract t from both sides. Subtract 2a, subtract t. Okay, we end up with 3t squared plus, nope, sorry about that, minus t, because we're subtracting t. 3t squared minus t minus 2a. Okay, 2a, again, we're solving for t, so treat the a like a constant. And now this is in quadratic form. We have our a value right here. Our b value is this -1. And our c value is this whole thing here. Actually, technically with the negative. So let's do our quadratic formula. T equals -b, which is our +1. Let me write that right. How about -1? -1. All right. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times the a value. A value is what's in front of the t squared. So that would be 3. And the c is going to be this whole -2a. All right. That a is what we're going to treat like a constant, all over 2a. Now, little a. Okay. B squared, x equals -b plus or minus the square root. B squared minus 4 times a times c. This whole thing is c. All over 2a. That's our quadratic formula. Okay, so 1 plus or minus the square root, and we get 1 plus 4 times 3 times 2, that's 24a, all over 6. And there's not much we can do with that. So we're going to leave it there. We don't know if this is a positive value or a negative. I don't know if it's temperature or anything like that. So we'll leave it as a plus and minus there. Okay, one more here on this page. Let's look at 19. We've got LeBron James. His vertical leap is 44 inches. What's its hang time? Okay, so there's kind of a little more explanation probably should be here. T is time, and V is vertical leap. Okay, so if we have a vertical leap of 44, we just want to find out what t is. That's all we're asking. So we can divide by 48. Divide by 48. Let's find this out exactly. Okay, and so we can simplify that fraction. 4 goes into both. That's 11 over 12 equals t squared. And we can square root both sides. Okay, and so we have t equals the square root of 11/12. So let's go ahead and get this as approximate now. Okay. Directions didn't say this is an application problem, so it'd be safe to get this in decimal form. I think it's safe to say that he doesn't care that he can have a square root of 11/12 hang time there. But this is 0.957 seconds. Okay? So he's in the air for 0.957 seconds. That's it. All right. So there you have it.